Hello and welcome back to Just Meg Elise, a podcast about healing, remembering who you are, and diving into deeper alignment. I'm Meg, and I'll be your host. During today's episode, I want to talk about when guilt shows up, that we don't abandon ourselves and allow other people to be disappointed in us or to wish that we would choose different and that still be okay with us. At times, people, family, partners, children, whatever, are going to have opinions on what you're doing with your life, the decisions that you're making, etc. And those opinions aren't always helpful. Sometimes, yeah, our family is trying to help us or steer us in the right direction. I get that. But there are going to be little things, little decisions that you make, such as having a me day or setting a boundary that they're not going to like. You know, there are going to be times when that pops up that you're like creating disappointment in another person, but it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. But a lot of times, especially as people pleasers, we assume that we have done something wrong, and then guilt creeps up. And then we start to question our decisions, like, oh, did I make the right decision? Should I have set that boundary? Did I do the right thing, etc. When nothing is wrong. Those sort of mechanisms have been programmed into us, especially if we are a people pleaser. We've been wired to ignore our own needs in favor of the needs of somebody else. So when we put our own needs first, guilt will inevitably pop up. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Guilt is just a survival signal that we've picked up, but it doesn't mean that it's a truth indicator. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. Especially if you were raised in an environment to like please others, to make others happy, to make sure others' needs are fulfilled before your own, you can start to feel like guilt pops up when you try and put your own needs first or do something that's just for you. They might think it's selfish. It's not selfish at all. Guilt shows up when we challenge the patterns of our lives sometimes. Let's say you're a mother and you want to have a me day and you want to have a day just to yourself. Your partner or even your children can sometimes maybe make you feel a little guilty for wanting those things for yourself, but you're not a bad person for needing you time. You know, or let's say you've been invited to a family gathering and you know that gathering, it's not going to bring you the joy that you're hoping for because maybe your family doesn't treat you that well. And you've been working on boundaries in order to put yourself first. And if you don't want to go to that family function, that's okay. But others are going to possibly see that as you being selfish, or they might be disappointed that you didn't show up. That doesn't equal somebody else's disappointment in you. In moments like that does not equate to the truth. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but guilt does tend to be our automatic go-to sometimes when we've been conditioned to feel that. Here's a good example. My high school reunion is coming up. I don't want to go. All the people that I want to stay connected with, apart from like a few who maybe don't have social media, etc., but most of them I am connected with already on social media who I wanted to stay connected with. And like the other people, I don't care to see them. I wasn't like horribly bullied in high school, but I did have people who I don't care to see again, you know? And I'm okay with that. But I had one friend reach out to me and say, hey, are you going? And I was like, no, I'm not. She goes, oh, I was really hoping to see you there. And of course that like pulled on my heartstrings and guilt started to come up. Like, am I making the right decision? Should I go for her? Should I go to like see a few people here and there? But ultimately the decision was no, because I knew being in that environment wasn't going to be good for my nervous system. You know, like it would bring up old feelings of how I felt in high school, very invisible, very just different things. It would bring up those emotions again. And like, why would I put myself through that? I just don't want to. And I'm finally in a place where I can start to make those healthy decisions. And yes, guilt might still creep up, but thankfully it was just for a moment and I was able to speak back to that and be like, no, this is the right decision for me. It doesn't matter what somebody else wants. It doesn't matter what disappointment they may feel. That does not equate to my truth. It could also show up at like in work dynamics. There's been times at work, like especially when I worked for that law firm where they would ask me to take on more work. And especially when I first started, I was there for 9 years. I would just take on whatever they wanted and I became burnt out. So finally, when I had to be like, no, I can't take that on. I don't have extra time. I felt tremendous guilt at first. But thank God they actually did listen and they didn't give me that work that they were wanting to pile on top of me. But there was guilt that initially came up with that. It doesn't mean I'm making the wrong decision. It doesn't mean that their disappointment equates to my truth. It doesn't mean that them being disappointed equates to me having to change my decision. And this could apply in so many different aspects. It could apply to family dynamics or parents or caregivers who are wanting you to do something that maybe goes against what you feel is best for yourself or what you truly need. Or it could be your children asking for things. And maybe you're wanting a me day and they're wanting to come, and I get that, but you're allowed to want your own time. You're allowed to want to go shopping by yourself sometimes. You're allowed to want to go to a movie by yourself sometimes, regardless if you have children, a partner, whatever. And there are going to be times when you are needing something, somebody else is going to feel disappointment. That's okay. They're allowed to feel that way. Their feelings are still valid, but so are yours. And your own needs are still valid. For a very long time, I think when I felt, this is still something I'm healing from, when I felt somebody else's disappointment, I made it into a me problem. And a lot of people can use that in a manipulative way. I have family members that I can think of who use guilt as a manipulation tactic. Well, if I can make her feel bad enough, she won't do what she's doing, when I haven't done anything wrong. And often we confuse disappointment with like being in danger, right? Especially if, let's say you had a caretaker who might withdraw love or get upset if you didn't do exactly what they wanted, right? Like then that disappointment made it feel like you were unsafe in some way, or that you weren't loved in that moment, whatever it was, right? We then carry that mechanism with us into adulthood, and we assume that anytime we're disappointing another person, child, adult, family, whatever, friend, that we're in danger. And so then we start to backtrack. Oh, did I make the right decision? Is this, did I do something wrong, etc., when you haven't? This is an emotional skill set. This is something that, again, I'm still working on myself. It's letting people feel their feelings without collapsing yourself. Somebody else they're allowed to feel disappointed. Your kids, maybe they want to go with you shopping or they want to come to the movies with you. They're allowed to feel those things, but you're also allowed to prioritize yourself sometimes. Both things can coexist at the same time. They're allowed their feelings. Everybody is allowed their feelings. Everybody's feelings are valid. But however, somebody else's feelings don't mean that those equate to your own truth. And it's trusting others to manage their own discomfort. That's another thing that comes up, especially in people pleasers, when other people are uncomfortable, especially when we feel we have caused that discomfort. We then want to save them, right? We want to rescue them. We want to comfort them, when that's not your responsibility. It is their own responsibility to manage their own emotions. Especially, again, if you're brought up in a household where maybe you felt like you needed to manage or like walk around your caregiver's emotions as to not upset them, then you might feel in adulthood that you have to manage other people's emotions. Like, oh, I made them upset. I need to do something now to make them not so upset. This is a very nuanced conversation. Obviously, this is not me telling you that if you say something really hurtful to somebody or whatever, that their emotions are their emotions and they need to deal with that on their own. That's not what I'm saying ever. We have to take responsibility when we've truly caused harm to another and that sort of thing. However, there are going to be occasions where you maybe disappoint someone and you've done nothing wrong, and that is the situation and the scenario that I'm talking about in this episode. You're not being unkind to choose your own truth. It's emotional maturity to be able to hold space for their disappointment. And I'm sorry you feel disappointed, but also hold space for your own boundaries and your own needs. That is a skill, and it comes with time. It comes with practice. And the next time a situation like this comes up, trying not to collapse into their truth and dimming yourself and your own needs in favor of what they need simply because they feel disappointed. So I have some journaling prompts to maybe help us go into this topic a little bit deeper. Here's one. Where do I feel guilt most often in my life, and who is it usually tied to? When's the first time that I learned that making someone else unhappy meant that I was wrong? What role do I still feel responsible in playing? Maybe it's the peacekeeper, the fixer, or the caretaker. What truth of mine have I been softening to hide or avoid somebody else's disappointment? What might shift if I trusted others to feel their feelings without the need for me to fix or soften them? What would it feel like in my body to hold someone else's disappointment and stay connected to my own center and truth? And here's the last one. What does my guilt protect me from? And is that protection still necessary? So again, you are allowed to hold your own truth while also letting others have their feelings. It's not cruelty, it's self-honoring, and it's emotional maturity. And with practice, it becomes freedom. Trust me, I'm still practicing this. Guilt still comes up within me, but I'm able to talk back to those thoughts now and be like, Megan, you are not being selfish. You are honoring what you need and what you want. There is nothing selfish about that. And if somebody else sees it as selfish, that's on them. It's not something you need to fix. You're allowed to love somebody while also loving yourself and honoring what you need. So hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to go deeper on your healing journey, please pick up a copy of my book, Don't You Dare. It's available on Amazon. If you want to dive into the ego voice or into shadow work, I think it's an excellent tool for that. I also have my most loved meditation bundle available for purchase, and everything that I'm talking about is going to be linked below in the show description notes. I also offer one-on-one coaching and hypnotherapy services. If you're interested in a session, please visit my website, meganshirey.com. I also teach a free live guided meditation every Sunday morning on the Insight Timer at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific. And if you enjoyed these episodes, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and please leave us a review. It helps us to reach more listeners. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be joyous and at ease, sending you infinite love and light. And until next time.